Welcome into Candlestick Chronicles, a 49ers podcast on the Blue Wire Podcast Network. I'm Kyle Madson. I write about the 49ers over at NinersWire.com, part of the USA Today Sports Media Group. As always, along with me, Blue Wire Billboard, Chris Biderman. We're going to dive into something ESPN wrote about the 49ers that I thought was interesting, and we're also going to take a look at the 2022 draft class, because that entire class is on the verge of disaster outside of the quarterback. But we'll get into that. Before we do that, though, I want to shout out our friends at Lamb Chops, sglambchops.com. That's the website. They're the official clothing brand of Candlestick Chronicles. Use Candlestick20, the promo code for 20% off your order. They have stuff from their winter line still out, 6 sweatpants, t-shirts, hoodies. They have a new spring line that's got this awesome mechanics jacket. There's cargo pants. They got a new t-shirt, new hoodie. Incredible stuff always coming from Lamb Chops at sglambchops.com.
High quality, very stylish, very practical. Just all the above. Been wearing Lamb Chops really for like the last 2 years straight. I feel like there's always that a day rarely goes by where I don't put on at least one article of clothing from Lamb Chops. So shout out to Lamb Chops, and obviously they've partnered with the Minnesota Timberwolves. They put out some
Our
cool
Minnesota
gear.
Timberwolves.
Your Minnesota Timberwolves. Nuggets.
Thank you.
It's comeback season for the Nuggets. But no, it's really cool to see. It's obviously well received in Minneapolis, and we hope our listeners receive it equally as well, because it's great stuff. It's awesome, and makes you look dope.
Which is the most important thing. sglambchops.com. Follow them on Instagram at sglambchops. And while you're at sglambchops.com, use the promo code Candlestick20 for 20% off your order today. I love the idea that you're just a diehard Nuggets guy. And you're like, look, dude, if you don't know ball, just say it. What Christian Brown is doing defensively right now is off the charts.
It's like, Jamal's not healthy. I don't know what else to say. He's not healthy.
It's honestly impressive what he's doing on one leg. If the Timberwolves want to be proud of those 2 wins against a one-leg Jamal Murray, sure. Yeah, no, good job.
Yeah. Hey, refs, call a foul maybe. Maybe just call a foul, just one.
It's not Jamal's fault he threw things onto the court. The refs made him do that.
Refs deserve to get thrown at.
We're also sponsored by Prize Picks. I've been having a blast with Prize Picks during the NBA playoffs, man. Every day, I find out what games are on. I jump into Prize Picks, and I make an entry based on that, that night's slate. We're recording this Thursday night. I had an entry that included Jason Tatum, and then I had Shai Gilgeous-Alexander in my lineup, Luka Doncic in my lineup. It is the best way to play daily fantasy sports, and it's super easy. On the Prize Picks site, prizepicks.com/candlestick, promo code Candlestick for a first deposit match up to $100. You pick 2 to 6 players, you pick more or less on their stat projections, and then you watch the winnings pile up. It's that easy, and it's a ton of fun doing it, and we highly recommend it.
And like, you ever, play traditional fantasy sports and like lose because a kicker made a 60-yard field goal or something ridiculous? You do not have to worry about that with Prize Picks, unless you have some weird kicker play in your entry.
Sure.
But at that point, that's kind of your own fault. Yeah. But it bucks the trend. You don't have any of the issues that you have with traditional fantasy, and it's a lot more fun, and we appreciate it.
So check this out. If you're on the fence about getting started, now's the time to do it. And you want to do this before Caitlin Clark's debut. And let me tell you why. Because Prize Picks is doing a free square for Caitlin Clark's debut, which is Tuesday, May 14th at 5 o'clock Pacific, 8 o'clock Eastern. And that square is Caitlin Clark and half a point. Half a point for the NCAA all-time leading scorer. Nobody put the ball in the hoop better and more often than Caitlin Clark did. And if she scores 1 point in her WNBA debut, that square is a big winner for you. So get to prizepicks.com/candlestick. Promo code Candlestick for a first deposit match up to $100. That's prizepicks.com/candlestick. Promo code Candlestick for a first deposit match up to $100. And when you get in there, go find that Caitlin Clark square, Pick that one, put it in your entry, and pick more than half a point. And that's a W. That'll be the easiest W you ever have in Prize Picks. PrizePicks.com, daily fantasy sports made easy. All right, let's talk about the 49ers and the thing ESPN said about their draft class this year, and then we'll talk a little bit about the 2022 class because it might be a disaster. All right, here we go. Big shout out to Todd. Todd was first in line in the YouTube chat. We were a little bit late going live, and Todd tapping his watch was like, dudes, we gotta go. We're on a timer here. So thanks, Todd. We appreciate you for hopping in. YouTube.com/@Candlestick Chronicles podcast. If you want to check us out there, we go live, I think once a week during the off season, but during the season, we're live a couple times a week. And it's a lot of fun. So we're doing more of that. There'll be more video content this season. So make sure to check it out. You can also just search Candlestick Chronicles on YouTube to find our channel there. Before we get to the draft class stuff, Chris, I want to talk about something Bill Barnwell wrote in ESPN. I like Bill Barnwell a lot. I think Bill Barnwell's super smart. When Bill Barnwell writes something, I very often read it and I learn something. What are you laughing at?
But just the preamble. The preamble to the but.
No, it is. No, because usually, like, I work in sports talk radio, so I listen to, not to brag, and so often when a national name gets brought up, it's to destroy that person. And this guy's an idiot, and he doesn't know what he's talking about. And how does he? That's not what I'm trying to do. I like Barnwell. He's very good. But in a piece he wrote, but he wrote the dumbest thing. No, in this piece he wrote about the 2024 NFL draft, he picked like winners and losers for each team. And for the 49ers, he said that Brandon Ayuk was the biggest loser of the draft because of the Ricky Pearsall selection. First, he notes that with Pearsall in the mix, Ayuk might see his numbers go down after a career-high 1,342 receiving yards last year. He said, well, those numbers might go down with Pearsall in the mix. And then he said, it looks like the 49ers are going to have to trade one of their top wide receivers, meaning Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk, as a result of the Pearsall pick. Or it looks like they're going to, or the writing's on the wall after the Pearsall pick, effectively. And he linked back to a piece our buddy and good friend of the show, Nick Wagner, wrote, our favorite cast member. Haven't mentioned him in a while, so shout out to Nick. He wrote a really, really smart piece about Brandon Ayuk and just kind of the 6 big questions around Brandon Ayuk. So everybody go to ESPN and read that as well. But it's that piece at the end that got me, because it's like, if that's the case, if the biggest loser is Brandon Ayuk because one of the receivers is going to get traded, then wouldn't Deebo Samuel be the quote-unquote loser here?
Yeah, so I mean, I agree with you. And first of all, like in being in the content business, like you and I are and have been, sometimes superlatives, like you just come up with superlatives that don't always go smoothly when you're trying to come up with someone to talk about. Boy. Right? Like winners and losers of the draft, right? Like it's just kind of like, all right, so who's the Niners winner or loser? And then you kind of have to think on it. And sometimes, and this happens a lot with national people who cover the league, who aren't as clued in as people who, you know, really focus in on one team. Like I think anybody who's really been focusing on the Niners understands the dynamic at receiver, in that it seems more likely than not the duo of Brandon Ayuk and Deebo Samuel is going to be broken up after this upcoming season. And that idea was sort of strengthened by the Pearsall pick. And I think ultimately that's what Barnwell was getting at. But yeah, he picked the wrong receiver to be the loser.
Exactly.
Just because, you know, Brandon Ayuk doesn't have a contract yet. But it's like, if you've been paying attention to the history of the Niners and when they sign their guys to their big contracts, it's usually in the summer, and it's usually right before training camp or during training camp or right before the season starts in Nick Bosa's case. So we've said it all along that we expect Brandon Ayuk and the 49ers to come to an agreement on a deal at some point before training camp starts. Maybe it bleeds into training camp. We'll see. But the Niners have a good history of getting these deals done. And when Brandon Ayuk signs a deal that pays him $25, $26, $27 million a season on average, with 70 million in guarantees, he's very much not going to be a loser. And
Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
so I just think that's where we're headed. But the Debo Samuels discussion is entirely different
Right.
because it's, the 49ers have too many good receivers to pay.
Yep.
And they looked at it and said, we really like this kid Pearsall, and if we can get him on a rookie contract, then maybe we move off of we move off of Debo Samuel next offseason, because like I think the Super Bowl is sort of the classic example of why you would pick Ayuk over Samuel. Like when Samuel's not running the ball well and those gadget plays aren't really working, he's not a super versatile and dynamic receiver. He's not a great route runner. He's not a great separator. He's somebody that you have to manufacture opportunities to get the ball in his hands. And given his injury history and where he's headed towards at the back nine of his career and all the hits that he's taken, it's a better bet on somebody like Brandon Ayuk, whose skill set is going to translate more gracefully as he gets into his late 20s and potentially early 30s. And I think that's what the 49ers see.
Right.
So, like that's where I think this is headed. And if you wanted to call one of the players a loser,
loser is relative here, by the way.
I don't think Debo Samuel is necessarily a loser, but maybe in this exercise, you can justify calling him a loser because it appears his time with the Niners is done. But look, like Debo Samuel has a good season.
Person most adversely affected.
Yeah, but that's harder on SEO than loser.
I'm the one in Google like, who was most adversely affected by 49ers draft? Thanks, Bill.
Picking up your phone. Typing all that out on your Safari search. No, but I just think like, that's
Safari on your phone.
Yeah, I do.
Ugh. I use Chrome.
I do. Yeah, I mean, I don't have any preference one way or another, really. I just kind of use Safari because it just kind of syncs with the, I'm in the ecosystem. The tech people talk about the Apple ecosystem.
Sure.
I'm all the way in on the ecosystem.
Sure.
Not necessarily by choice, just because that's the way things have been.
Yeah.
Maybe this is why Apple is getting accused of like monopolies and all of that, because if you get one thing, you kind of got to get all of them.
Yeah, totally.
So Safari, Apple product, they wrote me in, so maybe that's my issue. But no, I think like Debo Samuel, and you could even make the case. I know TJ in the YouTube chat said biggest loser this year would be Jennings. Yeah, probably. If Ricky Pearsall is good, he's going to get snaps over Juwan Jennings, I would guess.
Yeah, Jennings, you just mentioned all the reasons that he could see snaps in some spots, or maybe not snaps, but targets in some spots over Debo Samuel. I mean, that's the thing is Juwan Jennings, Debo Samuel, they're more likely to see their numbers come down than Brandon Ayuk. Maybe George Kittle. And maybe he sees his numbers go down some because of Ricky Pearsall. I just don't think Brandon Ayuk, who was Brock Purdy's favorite target last year and is somebody he trusts in every area of the field, I don't think Purdy is going to suddenly go, oh, Ricky Pearsall's over there, I got to get it to him. Like, no, I think Brandon Ayuk is still going to be the number one target by a pretty significant margin.
There's also this idea that like multiple mouths can eat, right? Multiple guys can eat. Mm-hmm. Like Brandon Ayuk was a 1,300-yard receiver while Christian McCaffrey had like a historic season and won Offensive Player of the Year. Mm-hmm. Right? Like it's possible for multiple players, and George Kittle had a really good season. Right? Like it's possible for multiple people. Yeah, it's possible for multiple people to have good numbers in an offense. And I think, look, adding another, like if Pearsall's good as a rookie, the Niners offense might just be unstoppable. Like if everyone stays healthy, or if one of the receivers gets hurt and he's afforded more playing time, then you have a first round pick coming off the bench to come in and contribute instead of, some undrafted rookie somewhere. So like it's a pretty good. We talk about here's Can I rant a little bit?
Rant away. We might be pushing back the 2022 draft thing, by the way. Go ahead.
Okay, well, that's when the 49ers for a long time invested a ton in their defensive line. It always felt like, oh man, they're building around the defensive line. They're just throwing bodies at it. Love it. Love building strength on strength. When they draft receivers, it's like, I don't know. It's drama. Something's wrong. It's all this drama. It's like maybe they just really like reinvesting in their positions that are already strong. Like why does the logic not transfer to receiver that we all talked about with their defensive line for years and years when they invested? It seemed like first round pick after first round pick in defensive line. I was like, oh, this team gets it. They gotta win up front defensively. It's like, yeah, you also need good receivers, and they do that, and we're all like hands up, like there's drama. This might implode.
The Texans had Tank Dell and Nico Collins last year, who were both very good. They had Noah Brown, who was a very good third receiver. They had John Mechie waiting in the wings. He's had some injury stuff, whatever. I feel like John Mechie had something very serious. I don't want to write that off as just injury stuff. That was my fault. I had him confused with Jameson Williams. I think John Mechie had like a very serious health thing. I don't want that to come across like I'm being dismissive
Google it.
of that. Yeah, we have the technology. But the point is, they then went and traded for Stephon Diggs this offseason. And then everybody was like, wow, holy shit, look at the Texans receiving core. And when the 49ers do it, but I don't know what they're doing. I don't know what they're going to do with all these. I don't know what they're going to do with all these receivers. They got to trade one, obviously. It's silly. I'm right there with you.
John Mechie had leukemia.
That's right.
That he came back from, which is crazy. Good for him, man.
Yes.
Good for him.
I knew it was some form of cancer, but I did not know which one, so I didn't want to say the wrong thing. And then I confused him with James. We're not making light. That was embarrassing. Yeah, We're
not making light of that at all. Shout out to him. And
he is an incredible superhuman feat to still be in the NFL after that. So
yeah, but the point is like the Niners. Everyone lauded the 49ers for being so willing to invest in their defensive line and doubling down on their strengths. Mm-hmm. And then when it happens at receiver, it's suddenly this like cause for alarm and drama and all this stuff. It's like, no, they just really want to have a good receiving core.
I get it.
It's about to get a whole lot more expensive with Brock Purdy due for a new contract after this upcoming season.
Yeah, man. And John Lynch said it was like 83 players that they had draftable grades on this year who went back to school. So they have a good idea of what next year's class is going to look like. And I think they just looked at the lay of the land at receiver and said, okay, we can get deeper there and have a player that we think can start next year. I don't think there's a lot more to it than that. And if you're picking a person who is adversely affected or the writing was put on the wall for them with that pick, then it was Debo. Although the writing was probably already on the wall.
Right.
It's not like, oh, now they're going to get rid of they financially that was probably going to have to be the move all along. This just put it out in the open for everybody to see. So
it's very difficult. Somehow the Eagles did it. Howie just in his bag as always. But somehow the Eagles have, paid two receivers and given Jalen Hurts a contract. Although Jalen Hurts' cap hits are like small over the next, I think, year or two still.
Yeah. And they still found a way to trade for Kevin Byard. I don't know how Howie does it. Man, what an icon. Luis in the chat, sorry if I'm mispronouncing that, said maybe because we're used to the status quo of what the wide receiver room does for the team, adding good receivers will translate into a different looking offense. Eventually, maybe it's that. I actually think there's something to that. You look at George Kittle getting into the twilight of his career. George Kittle turns 31 this year, dude. That's so wild. Kyle Juszczyk is in his mid-30s and just took a pay cut to stay with the team. I don't think that's two players that are really hard to replicate what they do for your offense. And Christian McCaffrey is getting up there. Who knows how much longer he's going to be as effective as he was last year. There's just a really good chance that over the lifespan of Brock Purdy's contract, particularly if it's the next 4 or 5 years, there's a really good chance that in the middle of that, this offense just looks dramatically different, not only from a personnel standpoint, but from a how they have to play football standpoint, because they don't have George Kittle as this mauling run blocker who also is one of the best receiving tight ends in the league. And they don't have this do everything weapon in Kyle Juszczyk lining up at fullback and then lining up in the slot and lining up out wide and lining up as an inline tight end, and defenses are just having their brains tied in knots by what the 49ers are doing formationally. Like, maybe it looks a little bit more like a standard NFL offense by 2027, in which case, like Luis said, yeah, hey, you know what? Having 3 receivers that you really, really feel good about is more of a requirement around the league than it is for the 49ers right now.
So, yeah, I agree with everything you just said. And look, if the Niners are like, it's really hard to keep a window open for a long time in the NFL when it comes to contending. And I think you can look at sort of what happened with Tom Brady during his career with the Patriots and how different the Patriots were early in Tom's career compared to late in Tom's career, and even all the iterations in between. They adjusted the way they played and the way they constructed their roster throughout Brady's time. And Brady was ultimately, the rising tide that lifted all boats. Mm-hmm. And the Niners, would love Brock Purdy to be some semblance of that. To really, if we're looking at the Niners picture long term here, it all kind of comes down on Purdy's shoulders, because if Purdy's good, then you're able to change over the roster and evolve the way you play and move on from aging players.
Yep.
You can do that gracefully and continue to contend if you have really good quarterback play. If you don't have really good quarterback play and you're paying a bunch of dudes, then it does become a little bit more challenging, right?
Yep.
But that's where the 49ers sort of are. They're in this phase where they're kind of transitioning from, what they were in the first, stanza of first act of Kyle Shanahan's tenure as coach, and moving into the second one with a completely new core potentially going forward. That's not going to be, Deebo Samuel, George Kittle, and Trent Williams forever. It might have to be some of these other younger guys, and some of whom we can potentially talk about. But that's just the natural life cycle of contending in the NFL, as teams evolve and they change, and you can't just keep everybody and pay everybody. And ultimately, it's a really good problem to have. It's a really good problem to have too many good players. Like, the Niners are kind of in this spot where they have too many good players. So yeah, it's a little bit difficult, and it would be everyone would feel a lot better about it if they had won a Super Bowl. Like, there wouldn't be so much angst about it if they had already won a Super Bowl. So then it's easier to have these feelings. But ultimately, a lot of teams would kill to have the 49ers problems. Like, oh, they have too many good players to pay. Like, boo-hoo.
Right. And that's a really important point, because that's what all of this boils down to is, yeah, there's a hard salary cap in this league, and they have a quarterback they like. And if you want to have a discussion about how much they should pay Brock Purdy, fine. Like, that's a totally fine discussion point for me, because where I land with Purdy is I land in a camp of, he's good, not sure how good yet. He had his first full season as a starter last year, and he didn't get an off season because he was rehabbing his elbow. So I'm in the camp that we don't know how good he is or will be just yet. But what we see right now, as of the 2023 season, you don't feel as good about him if the offense, if his weapons are a little bit closer to league average than the best group in the NFL. So I think the 49ers think they know. Like, I think they're going to cash him out big time. But I think that's a discussion you can have when it comes to what this roster is going to look like, what their salary cap is going to look like. Are they paying Brock $50 a year? Is it $40 in the Dak, Daniel Jones, Matthew Stafford range? Is it something below that? Like, that's where this gets tricky moving forward because they have to plan for paying him like a top of market player.
Yeah, Tim Kawakami, our buddy, wrote about that in a mailbag thing over at The Athletic, and he basically is looking at Jalen Hurts' contract as kind of a direct comp. And I think Hurts is, something like averaging out to $50 million a year.
Mm-hmm.
But the point that he made that I thought was interesting, they're not similar players in terms of the style of play, but they're similar in that they're heavily dependent on their situation and what they have around them. I actually think the way Brock plays makes him a little bit less dependent on the situation than the players around him than Jalen Hurts, given how, reliant the Eagles were on sort of, running game, tush push, those types of things.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the point stands in that, yeah, it's going to be like a very expensive contract. But it's not going to be a contract that, you pay Patrick Mahomes, for example, who's going to be the one who elevates your entire franchise. You still need a good supporting cast to maximize your quarterback play.
Yeah, so I'm looking at, now I'm deep diving quarterback contracts. Aaron Rodgers got 37.5. Derek Carr got 37.5. Dak Prescott, Matthew Stafford, Daniel Jones all got 40. Josh Allen got 43. Kirk Cousins got 45. That's APY. And then everybody else, Mahomes is 45. Everybody else is 46 and above.
Brock's going to get $50 million a year. I'm just saying it right now.
Stop. He's going to get more than.
Well, bro, it's not who gets paid.
He's getting paid more than Kirk Cousins, who got 45 APY.
Jimmy Garoppolo was the highest paid player in the NFL on the strength of 5 starts. It's not about who you are. It's about when you're up for a contract if you're a starting quarterback. The cap's going up. Like, it's not going to change. He's going to get $50 million a year and probably 150 in guarantees.
That's nuts. That's so nuts.
It's a lot of money.
That'd be the second highest guaranteed amount in the league behind Deshaun Watson.
And then whoever is due for a contract next year will beat that.
I don't know, man.
It's just how it works.
I know what you're saying. I get it. I get what you're saying.
If he's MVP candidate again, there's no way his camp is going to be like, yeah, sure, we'll take Dak Prescott money. $40 million a year, whatever. He was an MVP candidate. His numbers were insane. He went to the Super Bowl and played pretty well in the Super Bowl.
No, you're right.
In his second year as a starter, coming off elbow surgery in the offseason.
I know I said that earlier.
Like, unless he falls off a cliff, if he's the same guy or a little bit better this year, he's going to get $50 million. It's just how it's going to work.
Yeah, no doubt. And I do think that's the other aspect of the Brock Purdy thing, is I do think we're going to see a better version of him this year. Because he started his, whatever it was, eight games as a rookie, blows out his elbow, doesn't get to do anything in the offseason, and then just picks it up at the start of training camp and is the starter now. And he didn't really get a chance to get better at football. So I'm super interested to see how he looks. And you're right. If he does, I'm basing this off of this year and I think there were enough lows and enough sporadic stretches of play that I would be a little bit wary of paying him $50 million a year. But to your point, we have a whole other season, and if he's as good or better, yeah, he's not getting a Dak Prescott contract.
Well, here's the thing, though, too. If the bar is you're only comfortable paying Patrick Mahomes, like, that guy's not, you're not getting that guy. You know what I mean?
Sure.
There's a line of thinking where it's like, oh, Patrick Mahomes is the only quarterback I would pay because he's the only quarterback who's winning championships right now. It's like, okay, but Patrick Mahomes isn't available and you have to pay somebody. And if the Niners don't pay Brock Purdy, I'm willing to bet another team would pay Brock Purdy. So
right. Yeah, Jalen Hurts got 51, Lamar Jackson 52, Justin Herbert 52.5, Burrow 55. So you think he's getting more than Burrow? You think he's going to reset the quarterback market?
I don't know if he'll reset the quarterback market, but he'll be in that neighborhood. He'll be in the $50 million a year neighborhood. The cap's going up.
Right. Man.
It's an insane amount of money.
It's so much freaking money. Patrick Mahomes' contract is so weird.
It's just like a amorphous.
It is.
It's just like.
Do you know what the total guarantees on Patrick Mahomes' contract are?
It's like $500 million.
No, that's the total value. The total value is $450 million, which is wild shit.
Well, the guarantee is 300 or something.
No, the guarantee is $63 million. That's the total guaranteed.
Yeah, but he probably has like a roster bonus like early April that's like getting picked up no matter what.
Right.
That is going to trigger.
Exactly
so
what it is.
I'm sure he's
that's just
fine.
Wild how that contract is set up. And every single year we get the thing of, oh, Patrick Mahomes restructured his contract to free up cap space. Like, yeah, he's still getting paid. He's not doing this altruistically.
Yeah.
That's what I think Brock Purdy should do. If Brock Purdy was a good teammate, he would take like 20 a year. I'm joking. That's a joke. That's a bad take.
So Tom Brady did.
Yeah. I guess. Tom Brady took all those pay cuts and all those below market value contracts so Bill Belichick could get rid of guys a year early.
Yeah.
Those third round comp picks, baby.
Well, at least Brock Purdy's in this 2022 draft class that we're planning on talking about, which we still can. We got time.
You want to rip through it real quick?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. So the 2022 draft class. So here's what I want to do. I want to go through this draft class just kind of player by player, because the way we talked about the 2023 class and now the 2024 class of, hey, you need to find a starter here. You need to find a good player here. You need to get somebody who can stock the cupboard down the line when Deebo Samuel is gone, when George Kittle and Kyle Juszczyk are eventually gone, when Javon Hargrave is gone. They need to start figuring out life beyond this version of the roster. Trent Williams, another one. And I go back to the 2022 draft, and it's a little bit ugly, but there are still some players here who, if they figure it out, could be really big contributors for the 49ers. So if you remember, in 2022, they didn't have a first-round pick. That was the year after they had traded a bunch of picks to move up for Trey Lance. So they didn't pick until 61st overall. And that pick was Drake Jackson, defensive end out of USC, who struggled in year one, but had some flashes. Last year, 3 sacks in the season opener, and then played the next 7 games without a sack, got hurt, and missed the rest of the season. I'm not optimistic about Drake Jackson at all right now, but man, they badly need him to be some kind of productive player, even if it's just as a rotational piece. They can't have a situation where he's like getting cut at the end of this camp.
Yeah, I mean, so this is to me like the all bubble draft class.
Either like, that or they're already off the team.
Ty Davis Price is off the team. Tariq Castro Fields is playing for Washington. Drake Jackson, I think he's more likely than not to make the team, particularly if he's healthy, right? Mm-hmm. If Drake Jackson got cut or traded during training camp, like that wouldn't completely stun me.
No,
I don't think Danny Gray is making the team.
I'm at the point. I would be shocked if Danny Gray is on the 49ers this year.
Yeah. Then I think the Jacob Cowling is probably Danny Gray's replacement, I would guess.
Yes. Or Trent Taylor.
Yeah, we'll see. Spencer Burford, I don't think he's starting, right? He already fell behind John Feliciano and the 49ers drafted Dominic Cooney. So Spencer Burford's opportunity at playing time seems like it took a substantial hit. And I again, he's another one that wouldn't really stun me if he didn't make the team.
I would be shocked if he didn't make the team.
Okay.
If Spencer Burford they have Spencer Burford doesn't suck. He's not terrible at football. He just can't necessarily hold down a starting job. But
he's their fourth guard right now.
If he is their, let's see. So Feliciano and Aaron Banks are starting.
Yeah, I mean, you can make a case he's their fifth guard.
But they're going to just keep their best offensive. No, he's not. Behind who? Banks,
you could
Feliciano.
Be behind Pooney, Feliciano.
Banks.
Yeah, okay. He's probably their fourth guard.
Yeah, but you just need to keep good players who you feel comfortable putting in a football game.
No, for sure. But I'm just saying, like, a lot of times
I'd be shocked if he's not on the team.
Fourth guards aren't always, like, who knows? Like, would it be crazy if Drake Nugent or Jarrett Kingston like had a great camp and the Niners are just like, yeah, we just like this guy better?
That would be pretty crazy.
Yeah. I mean,
I don't want to. It'd be kind of.
We're talking about a fourth guard here. I don't think that's like it's crazy to say that a fourth guard potentially is on the bubble. I think Sam Womack, like he's not guaranteed a spot. Nick Zakelj, I would say, is on the outside looking in. Kalia Davis, it didn't seem like a huge vote of confidence when the Niners went out and got the guys they did, Malik Collins, Jordan Elliott, Yetur Gross-Matos to a certain extent. It all didn't seem like a huge vote of confidence for Kalia Davis. So Kalia Davis, I should say. So yeah, like to me, this 2022 draft class, with the exception of Brock Purdy, is like the all bubble class going into training camp.
Brock Purdy on the bubble.
Brock Purdy's going to make $50 million a year starting in 2026.
Okay, let's see. Yes, so the theme, I feel like Drake Jackson, Spencer Burford, Samuel Womack, and that I think that trio is in the same bucket for me, where they could theoretically start. All three of those players, I don't know if the door's open necessarily for Jackson to start, but to play substantial snaps for them. Or he could be cut. Samuel Womack could start. Remember, he won the starting nickel job as a rookie out of camp and then lost it in week 3 and wound up as a healthy scratch at the end of last year. It's kind of a weird career arc for Sam Womack. But he can obviously play at least a little bit. So yeah, theoretically he'll be in the mix to get a starting corner spot, but also he might just get cut. He might just be outside looking in. And like you said, Spencer Burford, maybe they're just done with him. Maybe they've said, hey, we gave you 2 chances to start at right guard. You're not cutting it, and good luck elsewhere. Or he could just start. I think all three of those guys are in that similar bucket. And then Kalia Davis, I don't think he's necessarily going to start, or he won't, but there's snaps for the taking at defensive tackle. Like, they just need help. They need depth there. Their defensive line is not great this year on paper, and they would love for Kalia Davis to just be a player that they're comfortable playing like 20% of the snaps, 25% of the snaps, where he's not a disaster when he's in. But also, like, there's a world, dude, where their entire 2022 draft class except Brock Purdy is not on the roster this year.
Yeah.
That's crazy. That's so bad. That's so bad.
But the thing is it happens more than you think. Like, if you were to go through every single draft class, through every single team throughout the league, like, the hit rate is pretty similar. But the difference with the Niners is they hit on so many dudes in 2017, 2018, if you want to include Fred Warner. 2019 was really the one. Like, you go back through, if you get multiple starters in a draft class, like, that's a home run draft.
Yeah.
Right. And like the last 2, I mean, Jair Brown's probably going to start. and you got Brock Purdy in 2022. Like, if you didn't have Brock Purdy in 2022, that would be just a disastrous draft class because none of these dudes are starting.
So that's okay.
Though
That's the
Castro
other
Fields might be starting in Washington.
good point. But that's
But
the other angle of this is if Brock Purdy is just that freaking dude. Brock Purdy is a franchise quarterback, and he is a top 5 guy year in and year out, and he's consistently an MVP candidate. If he's just that dude, then nothing matters from the 22 class. You can overcome everything if you have a franchise quarterback. Right. So that's what's kind of funny about all this is like, yeah, that's a potential disaster, but also everything might be fine.
Yeah, like 2019, the Niners picked 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. They picked 8 players, 2 very high-level starters, Nick Bosa, Deebo Samuel, obviously, a great punter, Mitch Wishnowsky, and Dre Greenlaw. Oh, 3 high-level starters, I guess. Right? So, like, the next year, you get Brandon Ayuk, Colton McKivitz, still starting, and Juwan Jennings. Yeah, 2020 class, kind of underrated, maybe. With the exception of Mook Dog and with your 14th pick.
Damn, Mook Dog.
2021, you have 3 starters from 2021, and Elijah Mitchell. And then the 2022 and 2023 classes seem kind of problematic because you did get multiple starters in all those other classes, but you really have between 2022 and 2023. It looks like you have 1 starter, Brock Purdy,
and
Purdy and Jair Brown.
Yeah. Yeah, the 2023 class. Jake Moody.
Right, your starting kicker. Kyle Shanahan loves to say starting kicker.
Well, yeah, I mean, they had 2 in camp last year.
Yeah, I just think it's funny.
Yeah, so, no, man, but it's the timing of it, right? Like 2017, 2018, 2019, okay, that's great, but everybody gets expensive, and now those guys are starting to age out, and now it's like, okay, now what? Yeah. And that's where like, man, okay, Brock being great would fix everything, but at the same time, if he's like a top 15-ish guy, then you start looking at that 2022 class the same way you kind of look at the 2012 class for the Niners. That was the LaMichael James class.
AJ Jenkins.
I feel like a player named Joe Looney was the only player in the league at year 4. And the only player to get a second
had a nice
contract
career.
Yeah. You think he went to the Cowboys and spent a long time with the Cowboys.
Short arms, T-Rex arms, but good interior guy.
Yeah, but that was part of the reason the wheels fell off in 2014 was like, yeah, hey, they got a bunch of dudes leaving and there's just nothing there. There's no talent coming up the pike. So that's why
that was the Trent Baalke issue. That was his biggest issue, was that he didn't draft enough good players. And he drafted so many dudes he thought would be good.
Yeah.
Who tore ACLs and great value in the 4th round. This is a 3rd round guy. It's like, is he? Because he's not going to be a 3rd round guy if he can't get healthy.
Word to
TJ for the win in the YouTube chat asked who's going to play linebacker while Greenlaw's out. Niners signed Devondre Campbell, 9-year veteran, former Packer,
former All-Pro.
Yeah. Former Atlanta Falcon, I believe.
I wouldn't be shocked. He was with Shanahan in Atlanta. Good knowledge. I think he's probably earmarked to be the starter at the will linebacker spot. That's the linebacker that's on the field for all 3 downs. Sam linebacker is the base package one who's not on the field as much. Maybe Devondre Campbell playing next to Fred Warner makes him look like an All-Pro again, but he has not been as good in Green Bay since being an All-Pro a couple years ago. He said it's because of how he was being used in the defense, which maybe it is. But it would not shock me if one of like Jalen Graham or D Winters just beat him out for the starting will linebacker job.
I was going to make that same point. Jalen Graham, somebody I'm kind of interested to see what happens.
Is it because
I think
of
they're going to
what
hit
Barrows
on
wrote about him with Scott McLuhan?
Well, it's part of it, but I think I just think they're going to hit on one of those 2 guys.
I agree. Jalen Graham looked like
both.
an NFL player in preseason, dude.
Yeah.
And then
We
was
love
a healthy
preseason.
scratch all year last year.
God, can't wait to dive into preseason. That's going to be super fun. Love me some preseason pigskin.
We'll get to
What do you
more on
remember
to
about
talk
last
preseason.
year's preseason aside from Jalen Graham looking like an NFL football player?
Ooh, they got shithoused by the Raiders. And that was the one where Lance
Trey
threw
Lance
an
looked bad.
interception. Well, he threw an interception that wound up being a touchdown to Ross Dwelly. That was the play that happened. That was the game that happened in. They played the Broncos, and Cam Latu, after dropping everything in practice all week, caught a touchdown. And that was a pretty big deal, I think.
You have a much better memory than I do. Maybe I just like block
You're
out
not.
all of my
That's because
preseason memories.
you're not publishing 15 times a day on game days.
I used to be. Yeah. I used to be. Don't miss that.
What was the third one? Is it the Chargers? Yeah, because not Easton Stick. What's that asshole's name from TCU? The TCU quarterback rookie played for them, and I think Robert Beal might have had a sack in that game.
Sure.
But yeah, he was just running around out there. Him and Spencer Wagey.
Man, new Green Bay Packers. Should we talk about that? Spencer Wagey? Do you have anything
No,
to say?
there's another YouTube show that's just built a house on top of the ball there. we'll let them handle it.
Okay, great. I'm fine with that. All right, that about it.
I think that's all we got. I think that's all we got for today.
Should we maybe, for our YouTube audience, when the schedule comes out, every video we have like a countdown clock to kick off to the first preseason game?
Nah, hey,
like
we'll get you
7 days, 12 hours, 13 minutes.
We'll get you a whiteboard for over your shoulder there, and it'll just be like X amount of days to preseason opener, X amount of days to game time.
That's actually a good idea. I do have some open space on my wall.
Perfect. 16 days till the Bullets are live.
Although, look, it is funny. Like, we're talking about these guys. Like, these guys we're talking about are going to have to play well in the preseason. That is going to have to be a thing.
Oh yeah, and we'll dive into that once preseason's closer. We're just trying to kind of, at this point of the year, get the lay of what the roster looks like heading into OTAs and all that jazz. So,
like, if these dudes are playing a lot, that means the coaching staff is like not feeling great about them. So if like Drake Jackson is getting, yeah, exactly. Like if Drake Jackson's getting fourth quarter snaps, we're gonna be like, this doesn't seem great.
Who was that a couple years ago? Guy from the Colts, former second round pick. Oh God, I can't remember his name.
Defensive lineman.
Yeah, Kamoko Toure.
Yeah.
Was like a monster in the fourth quarter of these preseason games. It's like, that's probably not great.
Just tossing dudes around. It sucks, man. I feel bad for some of these dudes just got to be innings eaters.
Yeah, man. And that's probably that's literally why they're on the roster.
These coaches hate the preseason so much that they're just like, we just need players to so our guys who are actually going to make the team don't get hurt.
Yeah. Last thing, and then we'll get out of here. It's late. Rookie mini camp is tomorrow. Starts Friday. Don't read too much into it. That's all. Like that's all. I don't have anything more to say on it. Like roster spots aren't going to be made or broken in rookie mini camp.
There were reports out of Santa Clara today that Malik Mustafa is rocked up.
Oh,
he's been doing some weightlifting.
Been known that just watching film, bro.
I love when I hear about how buff football players are. Like, oh, really? A football player buff? You don't say.
First time I turned the tape on, I was like, first time I flipped the tape on, I was like, what's that linebacker doing at safety? I was taken aback by his size. All right, that's all I've got.
Probably the most jacked football player I've ever covered was Corey Lemonnier.
Not good at football.
And Solomon Thomas might have been a close second. So being buff doesn't make you good at football. Just FYI, for anyone
No, it
who's
sure does.
excited about
It sure does.
about how jacked up some of these dudes are.
Yeah. All right. Subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Subscribe to the YouTube channel at Candlestick Chronicles Podcast. Search Candlestick Chronicles on YouTube as well. You can find us there. I appreciate everybody watching. Appreciate everybody listening. And we will talk to you next time. Blue.
Yeah.
Be right back.